two greedy peasants are conscripted to help smuggle a man, a woman, and 200 can, around 1,600 pounds of gold, to friendly territory in the wake of a battle between rival clans, not realizing that the defeated princess and her general are the ones they're helping escape. In the 1958 Kurosawa adventure, The Hidden Fortress. And that's the movie we're dusting off this week on Movie Bones. You know, I think this is our fourth Kurosawa / Toshiro Mifune film, I think, by my count. Am I right?
It's definitely our fourth. Did he do Throne of Blood?
He did Throne of Blood, and we watched the, the two ones. It was Sanjuro and it was Yojimbo. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So those are the other three I think we watched. And they've all been, all-star Toshiro Mifune and directed by Kurosawa. Yeah, so that makes four. And I don't know about you, but I think I've got a handle on these films now. I think in a way that after you start to see enough of Kurosawa's films, you start to kind of get a feel for how they work together as a pair. And I really do like the stories they came up with together. I really do enjoy their collaborations. It's, I don't know about after, their collaboration, because I know that kind of broke down after the 60s into the 70s. They kind of went their separate ways. So I don't know about that. But at least during this period, I just love what they did together. And I just want to preface what I'm about to say with that, because this is probably my least favorite of all the films we've watched by them together. But that's not really much of a letdown, because the watermark was pretty high for me. And what's your impression?
You had told me that this movie heavily inspired Star Wars. The New Hope with C-3PO, R2-D2 being like, kind of, not carbon copies, but kind of copies of two of our characters. I don't really say their names properly, Tahai and Matasachi.
Yes,
I don't know if I said those names correctly. But, as I was watching the movie, there was just a bunch of times I'm sitting there going, yeah, I see it. Them, the very first part of the movie, they're walking in, it's not really a desert per se, but, they're walking in an area, and they decide to both go different directions for a little while. And as they're going different directions, they both wind up getting captured. That's something that happens to C-3PO and R2-D2 in the movie. But it's not just that either. There's a scene, it's a really cool scene. It's a really cool fight scene between Mifune's character and a general.
Yes, I love that.
That, to me, it did remind me of, the battles between Obi Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader, and also between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader as well in Revenge,
okay.
In The Empire Strikes Back. There's some other scenes, too, that I just can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly. But, when you're watching it, you're going, okay, yeah, I absolutely see where George Lucas was referencing what he was inspired by. And I did appreciate that a whole lot. Just because, I'm a big Star Wars guy in the first place. So it's always nice to see where things come from. I think Obi-Wan Kenobi's loosely based off of him. Mifune's character, Leia, is definitely based off of the princess in this movie. There's just a whole lot. Those of you that don't know this, it's not an issue with this movie per se. But, it is a lot harder for me because, I get easily distracted. It's really hard for me at times to watch a film that is, that's only subtitles and everything. So I'm just kind of sometimes I'm kind of it's a good film. It can be a chore in that sense. I did wish that, this is one of those times. It's not a super duper long film. If I had this in a dubbed way, I'd probably enjoy it a little bit more. But like I said, there was so much about this film that did remind me, and I could see what he was doing when he made Star Wars, that I very much appreciated this. And it's a very simple story.
It's very just like Star Wars is a very simple story too.
Yeah, it's a simple story, protect the princess, kind of an adventure in its own way. It's a fun jaunt through feudal or medieval Japan, whatever you want to call it.
Mifune was approached, apparently. His daughter has said this. Mifune's daughter has said this, that he was approached by George Lucas to play Obi Wan Kenobi, but he didn't. I guess at the time, science fiction was kind of in a bad place in the 70s before Star Wars came out. And it had kind of a bad rep for being kind of like a place of low quality, Mifune is very concerned about the image of the samurai, and basically the Jedi are samurai, essentially, right? They have a code. They're laser swords instead of samurai swords, but it's a kind of samurai. So he was concerned about the image that was going to portray. And so he declined that. He also was apparently approached for Darth Vader too, as a compromise character because his face wouldn't be visible. And I gotta say, at least, and especially with Obi Wan Kenobi, I would have loved in an alternate universe of Star Wars. I would have loved to have seen a Toshiro Mifune version of Obi Wan Kenobi actually make it to the screen because he's become one of my favorite actors. And this movie, he's one of the highlights here for me too. In this movie, even though he's not playing a character with as much depth, he still is he's always got this kind of like a caged lion approach to acting. It's like he's barely contained energy. He's this ball of barely contained energy. That intensity that really translates so well, and it makes whatever role he's playing, you just can't take your eyes off him. You know what I mean?
You want to talk about this barely contained ball of energy? All four of the characters we've seen play, he walks around. He's very reserved. That doesn't mean he doesn't have quips. He's very, comedic timing is on point, but he's very reserved. He's got the stoicness to him. And then, especially in action scenes, and then action scenes happen, and it's just kind of I don't know. Even on the screen, knowing his character, you're like, man, this is a guy that I don't want to have to go up against, in any capacity, because, you're in for the fight of your life. I like that about his characters. All the characters he played, this one included, I already said it, that action scene, the fight between him and the general, that's a really, really good fight.
It is. It really was.
It characterizes exactly what you're saying, he is reserved until he's not. And then it's unleashed, but it's unleashed methodically.
To get to that scene, he has to chase down kind of like an errand messenger that's going to kind of spill the beans on the location, and he has to stop that. So he's chasing the guy down to the base where he's going to have the fight, but he's doing that on horseback. And I'm watching this scene where he's on horseback, and I didn't see a stunt double or anything, but he's riding this horse, standing up in the stirrups, holding his samurai sword ready to strike. And he's doing it almost, I don't know how he's compensating for it, but the horse is bobbing up and down, but he's gliding along like he's flying. And it's just this pose he's striking, and the way that that Kurosawa films it. It's not like an amazing stunt. It just goes along with everything else I've seen from the guy, and it's that same consistency in that intensity, in that attention to detail, everything he does, and it was just one of those. The fight scene was one of the highlights for me too. I have to say. Of all the times I watched it, I did not make the connection between her and Princess Leia directly. But now that you mention it, it's like, yes, she has a very strong will, just like Princess Leia does. She's also kind of like Mifune's equal in that she presents herself to stand up to him in very many ways as kind of an equal to him that can actually stand up to his strength, And I thought that was really interesting too.
I really like a scene. There's a scene in this movie. It's right there at the beginning. But there's a scene at the beginning of the movie. It's when they, you kind of first meet the character. And I wouldn't say at the beginning. Sorry. It's at the closer to the beginning when you meet these characters and you know that they're about to have to, leave where they are. And she brings up, she says something about, I'm just not going to talk. And she commits to the bit. And that's a big thing for me. And the reason why it's a big thing for me is because even when it's not meant to, sometimes characters are very much stereotyped. It's the fact that she holds to her convictions, like Leia. I'm not trying to make this a, Star Wars adjacent, episode, but I'm just saying, like Leia, she very much is in that same realm of those strong female characters that, exist, who, commit to what they're going to commit to, try their best to lead in dangerous, almost futile situations, or seem like futile situations and everything. That really said a lot for me for the character.
Yeah.
She was honestly one of my favorite people in the movie.
Yeah, same here.
We've already established that these other two characters were basically R2-D2 and C-3PO. I didn't dislike their characters, but yeah, there was times that, I was like, man, I want to see more of Mifune's characters, and I want to see more of Princess Yuki and everything. Now, it's purposefully, I get what he's doing. He's purposefully telling this story from the point of view of R2,
He uses it as a rather novel framing device, is what he uses with the characters, and you don't see that very often.
I did appreciate that, but it leaves you wanting more. I don't know if we should see it more from their point of view, because it might take away some of the mystique of those characters, which makes them so great in their own way. But yeah, it did leave me oftentimes like, when are we getting back to them? Like, anytime it was focused just on, our two, what I would call our two real main characters of the film, I was left going, I want more from these other two characters.
Yeah. This kind of character framing device that Kurosawa is using here, I could see that being somewhat polarizing in a way, because they tend to be very one note. I mean, they do that note very well. I'll give them that. I mean, that's what keeps them, for me at least, from becoming annoying. Like, fingernails on a chalkboard kind of thing. Because their one characteristic is we're greedy and we're always looking for an opportunity to get out of this and go away with the money and leave these others behind. And yeah, we get that. So they don't really change all that. And their purpose is not to change. Except at the end, I guess you could say they changed a little bit. That was a bit of a thing. Even in Star Wars, it's like, for me, too much of R2-D2 C-3PO actually after a while. It's almost like, especially when they brought him into the prequels and all that, and they've kind of pushed them in there into other things too. It's like I started to feel a little bit, okay, guys, it's like I'm starting to get saturated with these guys. It's like it's too much. You know what I'm saying? So I can understand that from a point of view is like these could be polarizing a bit. And I think there are probably other people who agree with me on that too. But there's also people who love them too. So
this is maybe my one issue with this movie is like when you want to see a bit of like, in characters like that, you do kind of want to see a little bit of character development in them. Now, with a character like, R2-D2 and, C-3PO, how do you develop those characters more? Because like they are, they're kind of set. And when I say set, they're droids.
Yeah. And they're really they're limited in their capacity to affect much in the plot.
Yeah.
They do some things, but they're not really effective.
But I will say, like, when when they're more, I'm now talking about the characters from this movie, there needs to be more, especially with like quote unquote human characters, than just like, okay, the comic relief of sorts and the same kind of one note. Yes, the whole movie, we want them, we see them really working towards their greed. And even at the end, kind of the same thing, at the end, it really doesn't super changes them all that much. But, you want to see more character growth. Maybe I would have liked to personally see them full on abandon, their ways of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, because they came from the opposing side, and so that would have been a nice transformation too.
That's probably my biggest critique is like, I want to see a little bit more change in them. And if I missed more change in them, and that's on me. They were kind of one note the whole entire time, and that can get kind of like, okay, guys.
when they went back to the place where the fire burned the sticks and left only the gold behind, and they're still, it's like no, I can carry 50, whatever, I can carry 50, and then they're still digging around and they come back. They leave and come back even when the bad guys, so to speak, unquote, are catching up to them and have caught them up, and they actually blow the cover, that the lead they would have had. It's like, guys, it's like getting close to the end of the movie. We're still doing this stuff? Okay, come on, dude.
I don't mean to say this movie doesn't take itself seriously, but in a more serious story, Mifune's character probably cuts him down.
Yeah, but in a more realistic...
You're too much of a liability.
Yeah, in a Game of Thrones type style movie, they're gone. They're totally gone. I mean, I guess you could say, I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to kind of synthesize their presence in the movie with ultimately there's a nice, neat thing, and I want to talk about this, is like they start to introduce a little bit of a theme coming in late in the film. And it kind of harkens back to what made me think of your conversation with me on Godzilla. Remember we were talking about Godzilla -1? And it's like the whole idea of coming to terms with the very kind of rigid, honor-based system that existed in feudal Japan. I like Akira Kurosawa's films in part because they do challenge that kind of mindset.
When you say it's like it's challenged, that's definitely challenged in Godzilla -1, which again, it's on Netflix now. Go watch it, people.
But it does. I got vibes of that here too, especially with that rival general, and I love that they let him live. First of all, he betrays his own side and he lives. You never see that.
I did too, because like I honestly, I saw it going in that direction. And when I say saw it going in that direction, what I mean is like when Mifune's character defeated him, the guy 100% expected, okay, I lost, it's seppuku time. Is seppuku the right word?
That's when you do it to yourself, but he was expected his opponent to do it for him.
Yeah. So, he fully expected that. He lost honorably. It was Sedai. And that's another scene that just like that really and truthfully, like that whole sequence made the film for me. Like it made the film for me. I'm not saying that I was lost on it at any point before that. I'm just saying like, this is what, any hump that it needed to get over, that's the hump it got over for me. The build up to it's great. I don't know if I'd put it on par. I want to backtrack a little bit here. I don't know if I'd put it on par with a fight like the final fight from The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, because that just, I don't know if we really talked about that too much, but anyways, or enough. But I'm going to compare these two fights a little bit, just because like there's less action than you think. And there's more like eye contact. There's more movement. And by movement, I mean like, what's, trying to figure out what the other person's going to do. It just really, it builds the tension of the fight and everything. And you kind of just see after the fight's over with, it's like his expression saying, I'm going to break some kind of vicious cycle that we live in. He beats him. Yeah. That's all he needs to do. The guy admits defeat. He admits defeat. He's like, I've been beaten. And then, he tells him basically, all right, cool. He was ready to walk away. And then like, there's really not a lot of conversation. There's more expression than anything. Yeah. And Mifune explains to him, is like, it's over. It's done. We don't need to go any further. Live to fight another day.
I like the fact that these guys apparently, there's a whole lot of subtext here. It's like, even though these characters don't share a lot of screen time together, there's a whole lot of subtext. It's like these guys are clearly, they knew each other from before things got tense between their clans. And they respect each other. He's seeing a person that's valuable just as his own, as opposed to just someone who's like, well, I have time to do the honorable thing just because. If you're a soldier and you meet another soldier from another country, I guess, or a general, someone who's your equal from another country, you have that kind of respect. But if you ever came into conflict, that would make things quote unquote interesting. But you would still kind of have that respect because, well, there's still that unspoken code of arms that unspoken code you both share as military people. Yeah. And with the whole scene with the fire dance that they end up at the fire festival, I love that too. What they do with the fire festival, because that has an impact on the princess character. And that kind of plays back into the theme of, there's this very underlying theme of, how short life is and the ephemeral nature of life. And it's like, it kind of refocuses without hitting yourself over the head with this theme. It does do a great job of giving the movie a little bit of an oomph where, most adventure movies wouldn't have that. And I appreciated that in terms of just adding a little bit of depth to the overall story that otherwise would have been straight up adventure movie. Yeah, so where are we going to come down on this, man?
I think it's changed for me. I think, just thinking about everything, I think I'm going to give it a Fortune and Glory.
Okay.
And it's not because of the story itself. I think it's because of everything surrounding the story. And then that one action sequence. I'm telling you, man, that one action sequence really sold it for me. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I am not a fan of watching movies that I have to read while I'm watching it. But I think, as I've said many times before, it's a piece of history. It's a piece of movie history. For those of you who love Star Wars or have a love-hate relationship with Star Wars, there you go. This is part of where that comes from. There's other Kurosawa films that help inspire Star Wars as well. We've talked about them. But this is the big one. This is the big one right here.
This is the one that really gets the attention.
You have some really strong characters in it. Am I a fan of all the characters? No. But you have two really strong characters in this film. I think it is a movie that you revisit. I think it's a movie that you have somewhere in your collection or how to access it. I know, I think this one's not on Tubi at the moment. I think it was on the Internet Archives.
This is this is archived one, yeah. This is an archived movie.
But it's also on, because I didn't watch it on the Internet Archives. I watched it on HBO Max.
Oh, cool.
Because it was on there. But, it's one of those films that, I think there's enough in it, and it's inspired enough, and it's inspired by enough, or at least, the director's inspired by enough. That, you know what? I'm gonna give it its due. I'm gonna give it its glory. So yeah, it's fortune and glory for me.
You've helped. I mean, I've gone back and forth a bit since we started talking about it. But when the first time I saw it, I think I was higher on it. And maybe it's because I've seen it a lot in a row. It came down a little bit because of the length. At the same time, talking to you here is like, I think I'm gonna have to put this on the line. It's on the line between Trust Me and Fortune and Glory. There is just those aspects that are really good. They're just so good that even if the movie runs a little bit long sometimes, I wouldn't even say necessarily skip through any of the parts, really, because you don't have to wait too long for something else that catches your attention in a good way. So anyway, at this time, we like to remind the listeners out there that if you're having a good time with Ryan and me dusting off these old movies in search of celluloid treasure, please do like, subscribe, comment, and of course, follow us on your podcast purveyor of choice. Tell us what you think we got wrong, because we're not perfect, and clue us in on a few of the titles you'd like us to see cover on future episodes. As long as they're available for free on Tubi because, or in this case, Internet Archive, because this adventure comes with no strings attached. And on the subject of future episodes, Ryan, what do we got coming next week?
Well, this is I want to say a strange plot. Not strange. I want to say strange. It's going to be very unique. A black sheep in a distant relative of Edwardian England, Blue Bloods, plots to murder the 8 heirs standing between him and the family fortune. Obi Wan Kenobi himself, Alec Guinness, is playing all 8 of these heirs. It's Kind Hearts and Coronets. It's starring Alec Guinness, Dennis Price, Valerie Hobson, and Joan Greenwood, and it is directed by a
Robert
film
Hamer?
director Robert Hamer, who's got some other films that I kind of want to check out at some point that star Alec Guinness in them.
Message me in Facebook, if you will, on some of those if you want, and see if we can find them, because I'm looking for more soon. Well, I can't think of anything else to say, Ryan, so I guess until next week, that's all there is to say, and I'll see you next week, and folks out there, we'll see you next week. See you next week, Ryan.
See you next week.
Okay.
Yoshi, それで腹が決まった。